It was all supposed to be routine, but my operation has taken a sudden turn. Massive infection, then collapse. I'm delirious and on life support. One of the nurses tells my wife, we're doing the best we can. Word goes out to my old friend Steve, who comes to my bedside straight from the bush. He's in braids and buckskins. He smells of moose. He leans over, puts a few strands of buffalo hair in a little leather medicine pouch, whispers something I don't quite hear. A month later, and to great surprise, I'm well enough to be taken home. I move my family to Nova Scotia, make new plans, get on with life. But not before a remark from Steve has stopped me in my tracks. You and I were having lunch. You looked at me. You stopped. Big, uncomfortable pause. And you said to me, you don't sound to me like a man who's been given his life back. Yeah. And you know, but I was shocked and pissed off by that for a long time. Yeah. But okay, how would it have gone differently if I had known how close I was to dying then?
Well, the crucible of making human beings is death. Every culture worth a damn knows that. It's not success, it's not growth, it's not happiness, it's death. That's the cradle of your love of life, the fact that it ends.
Am I really going to die? Sounds absurd for an adult to say, especially when I've been so close to it. But my thinking's been mostly magical. Death is what happens to everyone else. How does it make you into a human being? I have to find out what Steve meant by that. In the 5 short years since he walked into my hospital room, my friend Jenkinson has become an authority in what he likes to call the death trade.
Hello, Teresa. How you doing? Did you take half an hour
Stephen
off?
Jenkinson is a co-director of the Max and Beatrice Wolfe Center for Children's Grief and Palliative Care at Mount Sinai Hospital's Tammy Latner Center for Palliative Care in Toronto. He is also a clinical practice leader of the psychosocial team at Tammy Latner. He's assistant professor at the University of Toronto's Department of Community and Family Medicine, and he holds a master's degree from Harvard University in theology and the University of Toronto in social work.
So here's the dilemma. The old scheme of pain and symptom management, which was going to be the magic bullet, that means people are going to be able to die well. The consequence has been what? People are dying, and their pain is well managed, and their symptoms are definitely under control. And what is it you see in their eyes when they're dying? Well, I tell you what I see. I see a wretched anxiety and a completely overwhelming, almost toxic fearfulness. Ask them, what are you most afraid of happening? You know 8 out of 10 is going to be what? Dying. Exactly. You see, pain and suffering. Pain and suffering, they go together. Pain and suffering, pain and suffering. That's what I'm most afraid of. I don't want it to hurt. And so we say, no problem. We can get you there. You can still be sort of present. That's the promise. And you know what? That's the hell. Because they're still sort of present. And their pain is well controlled. And the magic bullet turned out not to slay the dragon after all. Because they were wrong about what they were afraid of. So I'm telling you that I believe that the depression, which is misdiagnosed all the time, does not come from the fact that we're dying. It comes from the fact that we're dying here, now. Guess what? It's not true the world over that people are depressed about dying. But our recipe for doing so in this culture is not knowing you're dying. That's how you die and not be depressed. I'm saying, why should dying be news to anyone? I mean, if you got your feet both firmly planted in the midst of your life, who has to tell you you're dying? What's going on?
Actually, if you wanted to shove those curtains open a little bit more, you might, even though it doesn't look good. But look at the leaves fluttering down. And was that snow this morning or frost?
No, it was frost this morning. Yesterday it was snow.
Yeah.
Sandra has had her news for some time. But when Steve comes to visit one day in late fall, there's still some things she and her husband Ed aren't ready to hear.
Things
Set
may
me
not
back
go
up
quite
again.
as well as we planned, so
So
just
my
leave
neighbor
it.
loaned me that hospital bed, and she said, I don't need it, keep it over there. So we just left things as is for now.
We hope we aren't going to
And
need
hope
it, but
that we
we think
never
we
have to use it.
eventually might. Down the road.
What's your understanding then of what's happening to you?
Well, I hope I have this right. I have terminal cancer, which means that someday the cancer will take my life. And that doesn't bother me too much because we all really have to die anyway, and we just don't know when, neither do you. So we're on equal footing there. We just kind of pretty much live day by day. You know, I could live another 5 years, I suppose. Nobody knows for sure. But you try to do the best you can.
Yeah. What do you find yourself thinking about?
Well, I'm kind of an oddball, I think, because I don't really think about it much. It must be just me. Do you think I think about it much?
All the time.
Do you really?
The cancer has changed our lives completely. It's completely dominates every conversation that we have. It dominates everything that goes on in this house.
That's amazing for you to say that, given what you just said. Because you heard what she said.
Isn't that, now that is
it's
really
dominant.
something.
Should I introduce you guys? Or have you met? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like he often says that I'm like in La La Land. And I kind of laugh. If La La Land is where I want to be, I guess it's okay. Because it suits me. I just can't see myself sitting in the corner crying.
Yeah.
I'm just not really that kind
So
of
you
a
know him
person.
pretty well, I'm guessing, for sure. As well as anybody does in the world, probably.
I should.
So why does he want you to do that? Why does he want you to face it head on, as you say?
I'm really not sure. Can you tell me why?
Well, I mean, we're...
Did you want me to find out from Dr. Rowe, how long I'm going to live? Is that, you wanted a number put on it? You wanted me to know a number or something?
I see it in your face that you don't want to know.
I don't really need to, for some reason.
Well,
I can't explain
yeah.
why. If I knew, that would be all right. It's like, excuse me, another example.
Why did you want this bed out of here?
Why did I want to? Oh, just the aesthetics of it, I think. It's a reminder. It's what's coming.
Yeah.
I don't really... I'm an adopted child, and so many people felt that I should
should find your parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't have to. It wasn't important to me.
Right.
I felt they did me a favor and they did the best they could and gave me a gift of life.
That's how you lived with
Yeah.
it when you found out.
Now, if they came, that's a different story, a whole different scenario. But it wasn't important.
Yeah.
I didn't have to. I didn't have to. I didn't have to know. Other people thought that was almost a sin. But that was the way. That was just the way I was. It's the same with this. I don't have to know. Anyway, right or wrong, I don't really have to know.
But the feelings that were coming out through your eyes and through your voice said, there's more to the story than I'm fine with it. Simply more to the story. It doesn't mean that you're not fine, but it means there's more. And the more is what you lost track of in order to live with it. You see? And at a time like this, when you find out you're dying, sure enough, doesn't that come back? So what I'm asking you both to think about is, when you find out that you're dying, don't lose track of it the same way. Keep it there. Keep it there like a prized possession, which it actually is.
I have to confess, I'm not convinced. What good is it to know that you're dying, let alone make it into a prized possession? How can death at your door turn your life around?
I don't mind it.
You don't mind?
I don't mind it.
Being called the angel of death?
No, I don't mind it. I don't, cultivate it too much, but...
And being willing to be the angel of death means being willing to do what?
Well, to be a faithful witness to how wretchedly difficult it is in our time and place to do something that is otherwise God-given. And I mean, we deserve better than we get. Of all the sad things I see, the one that's least necessary, least given, least part of the fabric of the way it is the terror. Yeah.
What are they scared of?
It's not something that's so obvious to them. That's part of the sorrow of it. What they're afraid of is what we're going to do with them after they die. No matter what you think you believe. You know the old saying, there's no atheist in a foxhole? Yeah.
Don't know that one.
Oh yeah, no atheist in a foxhole, right?
If you're being shot at, you suddenly believe in
You
God.
believe something. You believe something. That's right. And it's usually big. You believe something big suddenly. And this is what fills them with dread. You'd think there'd be some comfort in having this closet suspicion, at least, that there's something that endures the moment of death and beyond, something of them. But it actually sorrows them tremendously. And there's irony. And that's, I think, a peculiar, dominant culture in North American irony. Because the other half of it is, if I endure after my death, I do not believe that you who say you love me are going to conduct yourself as if there is something of me that endures after my death. Or in my language, I don't think you're going to carry me.
Though he had gone to Harvard Divinity School, Steve had not become a man of the cloth. A black robe just never seemed to suit him. For 2 decades of our friendship, I watched as he grew into a different kind of priest.
Well, there are a lot of people who come out here who will say, I feel God more in a place like this than I do going to church.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your feeling?
I don't feel God more, although I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I feel more. Maybe that's the same thing.
This comes out there.
Come up.
Now you gotta reach down.
Is this the first time you've touched a pelt fresh out of the trap?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? What does it feel like?
Well, you know, it's a mixed feeling. When you pull him up out of the water there, he looked like he was praying, sort of.
What are you meaning to do here?
We've been takers here today, so we have to make sure we leave a sign that we're aware of that. So we give something back, and our time will come soon enough.
Just a silence for a second.
Steve's approach to spirituality was one of the things that drew me and others to him. He'd speak to the big questions using poetry and parable, marvelous language that, more often than not, I'd have to decode.
There's some hint of what you left behind ancestrally a long time ago. And it's out here. There's no faith involved. There's no belief involved. There's just this direct longing that opens up when you're here.
Wow, isn't that a beauty? Isn't that a beauty?
He chose unusual teachers, like the Algonquin master who built his first canoe. On the day that Steve and his son Gabriel came to pick it up, I could see he was making mental notes.
And they don't get too soft.
It'll run.
It'll run. You gotta be just like this here.
Like gum.
Right there.
Yeah, okay.
Gabe, you want to come swimming? Let's go, buddy.
Philosopher, woodsman, boatman, bard. It seemed there was nothing he couldn't do well. So when his new canoe sprang a major leak, I was secretly a little pleased.
Now, does it worry you that you have water in the...
Worry now. No, that's okay.
But true to form and unperturbed, Steve turned the hole into both a virtue and a metaphor.
Everything that we're sitting in and that wraps around us here comes from out here. And if you have a problem with it, if you get a hole in it, you can fix it out here if you know what you're doing. Well, I do a lot of counseling work back in the city, and despite what people say is wrong with them and their lives, what they suspect is wrong, there's something else. There's a kind of a hole inside most of us. And it's in the approximate shape of a soul. So, of course, you can't know what the soul looks like until you feel your way around that hole, that wound. There could be a lot of sadness around about how many things we're missing in this life. You know, we don't really know about it until we put our fingers in the wound of it. Up until then, it's just a rumor. It's like death now. You know, everybody does the job for you. The funeral directors and so on. You know what a dead body looks like? Most people have never seen one. And so that makes your own death a rumor too, which is not terribly good news because you're left to imagine everything. You have no opportunity to anticipate it and work it through. And if you can't anticipate your own death and befriend it and so on, then how strongly in your life are you?
fact is, I haven't felt pulled strongly into my own life, as if, in spite of its many ups and downs, it somehow hasn't quickened yet. Even with young children, they provide me with more and more frequent reminders that I'm getting well over the proverbial hill.
I'm going as slow as I can.
I'm sure Steve often feels his mortality too, though he puts up a good fight at the blue line. Can almost keep up with his son Gabriel, now grown. Sometimes when Steve's tired, I can hear the raspy breathing from a respiratory condition that he's pretty sure will be what ends his life. He doesn't seem troubled by it. What did shake him was watching one of his patients, an older father about to die, his children completely unprepared.
In that second, I realized that in the moment when I had helped to create those kids, and put their little, impossibly small infant foot size, and I put their little feet on the path of their life, best as I knew how. Their fate was that their life path led them past my deathbed, past it, and right to theirs. And that's when I knew a thing no parent wants to know, that I had fated my children to die. And then it wasn't even a thought. It was like it was a monstrosity. That when I made them, I made them to die. And so as soon as I realized that, man, everything inside me leapt up and said, what? I said, I'm not going to trust one knucklehead on this earth with the job of taking care of them when they die, because of what I've seen. And no sooner they get that thought than the rest of it came in behind. It says, well, that's very interesting, Jack. You're hoping that, of course, that they're going to die before you. Is that what you mean? No, that's not what I mean. Well, what do you mean? So I said, I'm going to have to trust somebody. Not with my death, with my children's death. I'm going to have to trust someone. What do you think I'm doing standing here? See, put a lump in my throat to say it. What do you think I'm doing here?
Pamela and Jonathan have been living for months at the bedside of their baby daughter, Sasha, while doctors do everything they can to engineer a miracle. As their medical interventions get more and more extreme, no one will quite speak the terrible truth. Steve's perspective is typically frank.
The child is going to die from what she has. The question is when and a little bit how. She was bleeding about every 3-4 days. So they were living from transfusion to transfusion. And when I asked the question, why are you transfusing her? They didn't have an answer. They didn't know what to say. Because literally the transfusions are keeping her alive. In order to do what? Have the next transfusion. That's the answer. There is nothing beyond the next transfusion. You see? So this is called hell, medically speaking. That child should have been dead quite some time ago. But we have the technology, and so she's not. She now officially is on the list of people not allowed to die, that 22-month-old kid.
I didn't think she would be okay after she suffered her complications after her second surgery. And I never told Jonathan that.
You didn't tell John?
I didn't tell him that until recently. Because he was so... everything's gonna be fine. We're gonna do this, and and everything. We're gonna go, and we're gonna bring her home, and I couldn't take that away from him.
Pam went on her gut, and as she's told you, she knew Sasha was dying. I went in my head, looked for solutions. She didn't want to tell me that Sasha was dying because I was working on more solutions. Yeah. I basically looked at the hospital as here's like an endless number of options that we can just try one by one until they tell us that there's no more choice. And the difficulty we ran into is that the hospital, there's almost a internal movement to always try something more, if that's what a parent wants. And now we feel that we put her through way too much. What is amazing to understand is that for all of our knowledge, our so-called knowledge, our book knowledge, and our limited life knowledge, we were not able to be present for this notion that Sasha was dying. There had to be someone from outside who came in to tell us that it was okay to consider that Sasha's dying.
Parents must be involved unless they don't want to be.
He knew about us, and he knew, I think, we were really stuck.
And you could hear the oscillation.
While we were still there.
Yeah.
Like, he challenged me, and he told me everything I did not want to hear, but knew. And he put it out there.
What more than the brute fact of your daughter's dying? What did he tell you that you didn't want to hear?
My daughter was dying. And in like 20 different ways.
He said it in 20 different ways?
Because I tried to weasel my way out of it 20 different ways. But what if? What if we do it? What if there's a miracle? What if they discover something? What if she wakes up and she's fine? What if I wake up and it's all a bad dream? Like, I tried it all. I wanted him to bite and say, oh, okay, yeah, you're right, you should stay there, she'll be fine. But he wasn't biting. As he was speaking to me, that I felt like a weight had been lifted off of me. And I felt like we have to take her home. And we're going to take her home.
I wanted to show you some pictures of us coming back to the house. I think the lighting is dim. So she wanted to sleep in our bed. A little laugh meant everything in the world. And this was the going to bed ritual and the waking up ritual. An hour of just fun and games, without intercoms, without nurses dropping by. It was beautiful. This is the last day that we took Sasha out. You can see her eyes quite far away. Far away look in her eyes. And at this point, she needed a blood transfusion, sometimes 3 times a week. So she was being artificially kept alive. And one of the things Steve said was, do you think it improves her? And we didn't know the answer to these questions. And so he shared with us that he thinks every transfusion diminished her. And to hear that from him was very powerful. This is the last day. This is 4 a.m.
How could you look at your daughter and just hold it steady?
I couldn't talk to her, couldn't touch her. Didn't seem like she wanted to be touched. So this was about all I could do. We sang a Baa Baa Black Sheep. Then 15 seconds later, she let out a long exhale, and that was the last breath. I'm happy I was there. This is about 3 minutes after she died. Pam picked her up. But even to be able to pick her up like that, alone, was very special. To have this privacy, to have this peace.
When I first met him, I was working in a cafe. First time he came in, he put some beaver mitts on the table, and I thought, beaver mitts. And I looked at his mitts, and I thought they were absolutely gorgeous. And I think he asked me if I knew what it was, and I did. And I said, he said he made them. And, you know, my heart skipped a beat.
Steve and his wife Natalie lost a child in early pregnancy. They've been trying fertilization in vitro, a baby in a petri dish.
One of those ought to grow.
3 fertilized eggs have been implanted, but it's a risky procedure. They're hoping the same kind of high-tech medical intervention that can prolong a death might also serve to bring new life. It hasn't succeeded. Natalie pours a good part of her sorrow into caring for other people's children.
Maybe I was meant to carry them even just that short time, because it's so much more difficult to carry them for just such a short time, I think.
Hold it good so it doesn't go.
You don't even get to kiss their cheeks and they're already gone, you know?
And I can see that Steve, though little of it surfaces, is in his own way grieving too. Learning to live in a ceremonial way. We're greeting what Steve's Algonquin neighbors affectionately call the old man, the sun, with a morning prayer.
Asema naga bigidne wendan maknod non. Wabnong. Jean non. Giwed non. Ebnigish makminwa. Nadmushnang nuyam shkoka buyang minawage. Nadmushnang nuyam shko. Ndayam miigwech. Miigwech, miigwech. Miigwech. You start where you should start, with who showed up. And then you're lavishing your gratitude for the sheer majesty that our friend showed up again. And bring life to life, and then you're planting yourself now, and then you're saying, what you hoped you'd be able to, make of yourself and make of being alive today. Because some people didn't make it through the night.
How is it that you, who was born in a big city with at least immediate ancestry that's probably Scots or Irish or English, now is such a dead ringer for an Aboriginal person?
Well, the challenge that urban people have, especially, is to be from somewhere. Well, but isn't that a passive thing? Aren't you either is or you ain't? Isn't that true? I mean, what can you do about it? Oh no, you can do everything about it. The identity that most all of us have includes the loss of being at home.
All of us?
Oh, I think so. Everybody with my skin color, pretty much. That loss is part of their identity. And you'll be pretty hard on the earth the rest of your life, not to mention the people around you, if you got a hole for an identity.
That hole again. This time, not just a benign mystery about the shape of a soul, but the deep sense of not being at home, of disconnection from our ancestral dead that Steve says bites so ferociously when our time comes, especially non-Indigenous peoples. And for many, myself included, the religion they learned is hardly a help.
How many people are of the cloth? Yes, about half, okay? And then the rest of you, what's your sorry excuse for being here? Now then, we're gonna have to spend a little time with where our death phobia as a culture come from. Because the first thing to know is, ain't every person on the world as afraid to die as our culture is. It is not human. I mean, write it down. It is not human to fear death. Because it's not a universal fact. So, let's come to the nut of the dilemma. Because we're all heirs to this. All of us. Not just people with blue eyes. All of us. We're heir to it. I don't say we're willing heirs, that's a different question. But for sure, it's in our education. Culturally and religiously, all of us are heir to the idea that you die as a consequence of disobedience. And in that sense, it's a punishment. The story says, as you know, once upon a time, and a long time ago, things were so good that you didn't know how good they were. That's how good they were. So, you lost the garden, or your people lost the garden, or your people's people, or the first people, which is actually what it says. The story says, here's what I want you to know as a human being, you are homeless in this world. You don't belong here. You don't belong anywhere in this place. You see, this is the booby prize. That's what it says. It says, it wasn't like this. And what's the surefire indicator that you're not really at home? You're gonna die. You're gonna die.
The gift of eternal life, that relationship we have with God, or that we can have with God, that goes beyond life in this world and will take us beyond life in this world, is a gift. In Romans chapter 5, verses 6 through 8, for the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. You're not going to make it without Jesus. You're just not good enough. I have failed miserably in my life. And I thank you that you have allowed me to see it and ask you to save me from myself and from death and hell. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
In the work I do, there's a small percentage, I have to tell you, of people who come into their dying time with a fairly intact, let's call it a religious understanding of what's happening, what's about to happen to them, and what the ultimate outcome is. Not many.
I'm glad you said to walk slow because that's my only speed.
The closer they get, one of two things happens to that conviction. One is that it's truer now than it's ever been, but it gets really narrow. In other words, there's almost nothing to say about it.
And where will I be?
You'll be here and I'll be here.
Okay.
You'll be here and I'll be here.
And the other group is much more numerous, and those are the people that as they get closer, then everything they heard in church starts to ring more and more hollow and of less and less consequence. And that terrifies them no end.
But is that what I'm seeing in Sandra's eyes? Or is it my own fear of there being no home for me after I die? My own beliefs, all up for grabs.
Good morning, everyone. This is a moment I never anticipated would happen to me, but it has. And having said that, I've just wanted to tell you that, as you know, I've been quite ill in the past few months, and it's my time to go to glory very shortly. And I hope that I've helped make a little difference in some way or other. But I do want to say thank you to everyone until I see you in glory. God bless.
I have it set up here, and I'll just fold this here. And, I guess one of the options that I was considering is whether it's something that might be fitting to play at the funeral.
I think it
something you'd be
would.
comfortable and you feel would be appropriate.
I do.
All right. Yeah, if you're up for that.
I won't be up for it, but
Well.
yeah, not really up.
Yeah.
You know.
You'll be much higher up than most of us. Yeah.
Oh, we're bad. We got to stop this.
Yeah, but we're good at it.
Yeah.
Few of the hundreds of people Steve counsels seem ready to meet their death without fear. Kathy, the new patient, is one of them.
Now you can still speak. You can get a full breath to speak, I notice.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. So you're concerned about something, a lot of things, but one thing in particular when it comes to your kids, I think.
I want us to be able to express how we feel. I want them to. I think I'm fairly good at it. But kids are not so good at it. I would say our family is the classic blended family with all that brings. So I want the three of them to still be a family.
That means you're afraid they won't be.
Yes, I'm afraid they won't.
And you think there's a real possibility they won't be?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It would have been horrible if I had died any earlier for Fran. I think I sort of feel, oh, God, I got to
19.
Yeah, like I think
Yeah.
that's really great. I got to 19 with
You
her.
bet. Yeah.
You know, I won't be able to see some other big milestones in life, but
Yeah.
and for Tim, I'm very sad that I don't get to be his mother for a longer period. But I know that he has a wonderful father.
What I'm going to tell you is, and it's going to be hard to take on as a mom, what I'm about to tell you. But as one parent to another, I think it's a true thing. Their capacity to be a family after you're gone is going to derive from how you died. Not of what, how you did it. In other words, how human you can be in the face of something that seduces you away from being human is the thing that will determine what kind of a family they can be. It's the table you set is going to determine what food they eat now. You see? The work for you is trying to decide how to be a parent at a time like this, and how to be a spouse at a time like this. You have to learn something that you wish you didn't have to learn. Right? It's how to love somebody as if it's not going to last. Because it's not. The way we're trained to love, whether it's love a person, or love yourself, love a cause, is we're trained to love what's lovable about it. You don't love anybody until you love their end. You don't love being married until you love the end of the marriage too. Because the marriage includes its end. Of course it does. Just as truly as getting born includes not breathing anymore sometimes. And that's what you have to love. Not accept. Accept's too neutral. You have to love it. That's really active. You have to say yes to that.
Including death from the start of life. Easy enough for me to say, but it's still an idea that feels abstract, remote. All of a sudden, though, it gets terribly real. Our son Sammy is born in severe distress, fighting for breath as if half drowned.
Don't say a word. Gonna buy you a
He's hovering between the worlds, an ominous repeat of my own collapse.
Don't sing. Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring. And if that diamond ring...
I put in a desperate call to Steve.
Mama's gonna buy
We haven't spoken in many months. What do you want me to do? He asks. Anything, I say. Well, he says, you need to think of what you owe. I haven't a clue of what that means.
Oh, yes. So you're saying, you said then, the implication for my not being grateful enough for getting my life back fell on my son. He was paying for the sin of the father.
No, it's not my language
That's
at all.
horrifying.
Yeah, it's not my language at all. Paying and sin and all that.
I mean, you're more skilled than I and trained enough in theology to know how much like the notion of a vengeful Jehovah that is, and we have to propitiate the anger of the God.
Yeah. It's nothing to do with it at all. You use the phrase to be given your life back, right? As a gift. So it came from somewhere. And if it came from somewhere, it left a hole in order to come to you. By the same token, with the same understanding, you got a chance to live again. That came from somewhere, and it made a hole. It's not sin. It's not pain. But the hole yearns to be spoken to. Right? It yearns to be, maybe you could say, fed. If you don't say paid, you could say fed.
Ready?
It's maintenance, Tim. It's not punishment.
Ready?
Our son is alive and healthy, all the more so, it seems, for what he's been through. And I can't deny the sense that I do owe something for that. But just how much am I in debt? And to what? Or whom? How can I ever pay it back? Start to fill in the holes while I still have time.
So somewhere in the course of your life-ending illness, your experience is almost inhumanly proportioned grief. You've incurred this massive debt, and you don't know what to do. But then you suddenly realize, well, grief is the awakening. Grief is the sign of life stirring towards itself. Your life is in the loop. Your life is the loop. You're part of the loop. And hopefully that stirs in you this feeling enormously grateful and then enormously indebted, and you don't know what to do about the two of them, and you think you're supposed to do something about the two of them, but you're not. You're supposed to know it and then walk around like it's true.
So that's what making a human being means. Sowing grief and death right into life. It's a wisdom that feels far removed from the kind of vitamin-enriched white bread world that both Steve and I grew up in, but completely familiar to the indigenous cultures that he's embraced.
Buried. I give you a good life. Yeah, starting last week. Good life starting last week. Yeah. So everywhere you go, goodness comes. Yeah. There's a big tradition in Mongolia. They make 12 blessings as I know it. Yeah, and so you bless, of course, where you are, but you have to think big. It's because you're trying to make a great gratitude for everything that, you know, gave life. So you have to see it in your mind's eye as best as you can.
Too much time thinking of myself. I guess it's a feature of the age I've lived in. And I'm having to chew on Steve's parting shot that even your death is not for you.
Somebody who's dying has a job description in front of them. No one asks them to do it. Their job is to die, now I'm going to say extravagantly instead of well, to set the banquet table that should be spilled, you know, in the wake of their dying, where everyone who ever knew them or whoever wanted to or whoever didn't want to is invited, yeah? And the storytelling that ensues is the feast.
I was asked to see a guy who was a United Church minister. And he was in the end stage of lung cancer. So we sat down and I said to him, "You're still working like that?" "Oh yeah," he said. "I preach every Sunday." He can't breathe. So I said, when you're preaching, do you include what's happening to you in what you talk about? "Oh, no. He said, "That's not why they come to church on Sunday." So I said, "You know that guy you've been preaching about for 30 or 40 years? And he cocked his head a little bit and he said, "Yeah." I said, "You remember, he, as the story goes, he knew he was dying too, remember? Just like you. And they even have a name for when he told them. It's called the Last Supper, remember that? You remember it was the feeding, right? The thing you do in communion, yeah. And you remember he said that me telling you what's going to happen to me is your food. So the news is the food. And your solution every Sunday is that nobody eats.
Is the grief that you speak about so often what comes when you realize belatedly that you've been
on the take? Exactly. That's a big part of it. The grief of being alive. You know, unfortunately, the word throws so many people off because they think it's a drag. Like it's a thing that you shouldn't have to know or feel. Can't you just love being alive without this grief thing that you keep being on about? Like, what about Disneyland? Come on. It's possible just to be happy, isn't it?
Well, that's an unfair characterization to put it as Disneyland.
No, it's not. No, it's not. You travel with me for 2 days and tell me how unrealistic it is.
I mean, what do other people say? I'm happy to be alive because I see that flower or I see that beautiful morning sun.
Okay, and where's your capacity to see the flower come from? What season are we in right now? The dying away of the very flower you're talking about. So until your ability to see the flower is rooted in the fact that it won't always be there, and neither will you, how much of the flower do you see? So you just go from the flower to your life and say, your ability to love being alive, does it come from the fact that you nearly died through, act of God or some kind of mayhem, and then you didn't? So you can tell the story and it becomes a war story? Is that where loving being alive come from? That you're not dying, that you're not dying, that you're not dying. That you won't die, that you, in no time soon, not in any meaningful sense of the term, are you dying or will you die?
Excuse me. It's turned dark and
One of her biggest fears is leaving me behind. And I told her a couple of weeks ago, well, it was last week, I said, it's all right, you can go. You can go. If you're staying and holding on for me, I'm giving you my permission to go. And that's what I told her. And I think she needed to know that.
Good man for doing that.
Huh?
Good man.
But we'll do what we got to do, Tim, and that's what we got to do, what we got to do.
What was that tune you were humming, Kenley? You went and did it. A little Moonlight Can Do.
Ooh, what little moonlight can do. Ooh, what little moonlight can do to you. You're in love, your heart's a twitter. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ooh, ooh.
Well, I found it very moving, and I'll say as well, an elegant image that you described your mother's death as her setting off in a canoe.
Mm-hmm.
I found that incredibly moving. I don't look at a canoe the same way now.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah. But you know, when I'm sitting at the deathbed of somebody's mom, it's just as true as when it was mine. And I was just looking at her, and I was looking at her, you know, the struggle, rise and fall. And then I just kind of looked at, you know, the space between her hip bones. For some reason, I just looked. And as soon as I looked there, I saw that whole thing. And, you know, the language of describing canoe is very skeletal. You have skin, and you have ribs, and you have the spine, the keel, and it's very similar. They're all stitched together just like you are. It's the most obvious thing in the world, that she was that canoe that literally brought me into this world. And when that boat's in the current, it moves just like the current does. The same faithful belief in the way things are unfolding. Yeah. And so her body was a canoe, you know, but not in the wind anymore. So in the current instead, moving off, you know, without me.
When I lay pretty close to death's door myself, not many years ago, you came to see me.
Did you think that's where you were?
No,
Then?
I didn't. I didn't.
No, I know you didn't. You didn't see dying. That was clear, right? So this is what makes the challenge. When I say, if you have to get the news of your death from somebody else, how firmly in your life are you? That's what it means. But it's a question that people who are not at death's door should be carrying around in that little medicine pouch around their neck to go with the buffalo hair.
How
that
do
question,
I arrange my life so that I can
not
figure it out?
arrange. No,
how
not
do
arrange. No, how do you carry what knowing that you will die does to you all the time? So dying, knowing about it, living it every day, not as a hypothetical, as a given, as a personal thing, as a necessity, as justice, as a sign of mercy, as an indication of the compassion that's stitched in the fabric of the universe itself. That's what dying is. The grief that's for real, the big one, it comes from a recognition of the way the life is and must be. that it requires death to be able to continue, because death feeds everything that lives. The recognition that that's the case, and that includes not you, that's the easy part to see, but it includes the people that you love and the things that you don't want to end. That's grief, and it's not personal. But the key, the real skill to being grateful is not to be grateful for the stuff that benefits you. That's easy. What about being grateful for the stuff that doesn't benefit you in the least, but you're grateful that it's in the world anyway? Now you're getting somewhere. Now you're seeing the big story. Now you're willing for life to be bigger than your lifespan or your children's lifespan. Now you're getting somewhere. Grief is not a feeling. Grief's not how you feel, grief's what you do. Grief is a skill. And the twin of grief as a skill of life is the skill of being able to praise or love life.
So much for my ducklings.
Which means wherever you find one authentically done, the other is very close at hand. Grief and the praise of life, side by side. The honored guests, room at the head table. And they're toasting you. Grief and the ability to love life, they're clinking their glasses and toasting the living. So here's to your health. Until the time comes we come to get you, live well. Films don't really end, eh? They just obey the distribution date. Maybe that's what it is.
Well, Kent, remember Kent, the cameraman?
Yeah.
He said, this film's not going to end until you die.
That's true. Why then, though? I mean, come on, think big.